Russian opposition believes that a next wave of mobilization is ahead and coming fairly soon, while we have a new conspiracy theory about the attack, the terrorist attack on the Crocus concert hall in Moscow. And finally, we are going to talk not just about the developments along the front line, but also about international aid for the Ukrainian side in this situation report. Hello and welcome. Before we begin, overall, the first car for the donation has been bought. As I told you in the past, I'm collecting money for evacuation cars that are meant to bring heavily wounded persons to a central gathering point where they can be taken over by ambulances. There, the money that was donated already paid for 4 cars, and more will be able to be bought from that money. And the first car that you can see here is already on its way into Ukraine and is going to save lives. Supposedly, every car is saving up to 250 lives a month until it's destroyed. They don't last forever, but if that is only closely to true, then this would obviously save a lot of lives. So thank you to everyone who helped donate. If we go to the overall situation, we have a Ukrainian strike against a Russian power plant that we can see here. Ukrainian drones hit a thermal power plant in Rostov, and you can see a ground to surface missile, a surface to air missile rising up here in the background. And this was in Rostov, where the Ukrainians struck a power plant after obviously the Russians have struck a number of Ukrainian power plants. Also, just fresh in claims that Russia has used gliding bombs for the first time against the city of Kharkiv. This seems to be close to confirmed as of now, and there are fresh reports of explosions also from Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, and Dnipro. So it might be that there have been gliding bombs used against those targets as well. Lukashenko said that the terrorists from the Crocus attack in Moscow initially wanted to flee to Belarus, but as his security services are so good and the cooperation with the Russians was so good, they realized that they won't be able to cross over and then try to go to Ukraine afterwards. By saying that, by basically claiming that his country works so perfectly well, he at the same time contradicted Putin's claims that there was a window of opportunity agreed to with the Ukrainians in which the terrorists were to flee into Ukraine, which obviously doesn't make sense, as the whole front line is fully militarized with mines, with soldiers on both sides that wouldn't simply let a few guys cross through easily. And now the information is getting more funny, because the Belarusian opposition media Nexa has made a number of claims according to which on the videos there are men visible with blue jeans and blue shirts, and they all act in a weird way. The thing is, they then claim that they have identified them, and the special forces that arrested some of the terrorists were them as well, and they claim that they have identified others with this, that the persons are identical. This is continuing, and this is being seen by some as some kind of proof. And as we're talking about a conspiracy theory, we just need to be aware that this is not a proof. This is at best some hints that there could be something fishy at it, but the behavior, that weird behavior, for instance, one of those in blue starts sitting down relaxed and taking and filming, but we see that because he was filmed by someone else filming, who was obviously also sitting down, and all of those videos were taken before the shooting even started. We see different behavior by those in blue. Some shove others around, one leaves the room, others walk in, and we need to be aware that 6,200 tickets were sold, so by pure statistics, a certain number would be in wearing all blue, so that doesn't mean too much. We need to be aware here that there's the risk of a confirmation bias, or of the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, as some are so intent of wanting to find a proof that Russia had its hands in that the FSB was involved, that they're looking for every clue that they can find, and simply until they find a clue, while not being really objective about this. This is in simple terms, we should look at it by Occam's razor, whereas the most easiest explanation is the most likely one, and obviously the Islamic State has delivered all usual proof for a terrorist attack by them, and they claimed the responsibility. So this is still the most likely reason. Now, I've watched the videos myself, and some of those behaviors of the men in blue seems indeed kind of weird, but just to be clear, this is not a proof. As of now, I am still very convinced that this was an Islamic State attack, and I'm not convinced about this being FSB agents. There's even an interview with one of them who was identified by activists, and he claims that he works in a construction company. But there comes the beauty in play that of conspiracy theories, as a conspiracy theory is based on the argument that no proof that is being delivered is correct, as it's delivered by those who do the conspiracy theory. They can simply claim whatever they want. So if we have somebody saying that he's not an FSB agent but a construction worker, then either they identified the wrong one, or he is an FSB agent and he simply doesn't admit it, or he might not be an FSB agent but another person is, or maybe that one that is the construction worker is the only one in blue who is not an FSB agent. The easiness of a conspiracy theory is that it can't be refuted. Whenever an argument against one of the core points is being brought up, it's either being ignored or simply another argument is being found. That's one of the easy things about conspiracy theories, and that's why so much of them exist. So that doesn't mean that the FSB 100% was not involved, just to be clear. If looking at the facts that I see, I would say 80 to 90% this was an Islamic State attack, but it still allows for a small window of a false flag involvement, of some Russian involvement. There's still some minor opportunity of it, but the proof, I don't see proof as some claims. Those claims that we see here from Nexa aren't proof. They are claims, nothing more than that. And I hope I can leave it at this as of now, because this is not a topic I like to circle around on this channel. So I hope this will be for the last time that we have to talk about it, and that those 39, I think was the last number, that were killed there are not going to be continuously abused by either side for some propaganda, as we know that these claims of either false flag or of a Ukrainian-American operation are being spread by both sides in this war. Let's switch to the developments along the front line. Now we have movements along the front line, but claims of movements, I have to say. But as of now, I do not see any proof. Now, there's claims that the Ukrainians have withdrawn further at Terny, but I do not see that any geolocalization is over the last points where the Russians have been here and roughly here. I don't see the Russians having entered Terny as of now, so north of the Seversky Donetsk, it seems to have been more or less stable. There are some claims that the Russians have advanced in this direction here, but close to Vesele, no proof of that either, no confirmation by the Ukrainian side that I see as of now. In the Chasiv Yar, I do not see Chasiv Yar Ivaniske. I do not see any change in territory, but I found this is a pro-Ukrainian map, which I think is kind of interesting because it shows us more or less the same front line that we can see here. But the interesting part is, according to that, the Russians already managed to enter the first line of defense that is directly at the outskirts of Chasiv Yar, so that line has already fallen. The pressure on Chasiv Yar keeps mounting, but this is not a fresh change. We talked about this in the last situation report. At Avdiivka, we have a small change as well. The Russians were able to gain some ground here at the northeast of Berdyshy, and they try to cross over the river here to cut the lines of communication between Berdyshy, Semenivka and Orlivka, but as of now they don't seem to have managed to achieve that. And that's actually already it. because while there is fighting at Krasnohorivka, at Teorivka, at Novomikhailivka, we have some fighting south of Velika Novosilka, obviously at Orikhiv, and there are reported ground attacks on the bridgehead in Krinky. There is no visual proof whatsoever that anything has changed as far as I have seen. What we do see, though, is that the Russians are increasingly using Starlink on the front line. According to reports, there's even a shop now in Kremina that is selling Starlink terminals to Russian soldiers. The Ukrainians are massively concerned about it because it takes away one of their big advantages, the ease of communication that is safe along the front line. And from the Ukrainian side, there is claim that the Russians should be easy to identify, as each Starlink terminal has a certain number, and thus the Starlink company would know which terminals were given to Ukraine and which one were sold to any other country and are just being used inside of Ukraine. So Starlink could turn it off, but at least as of now, nothing in this regard has happened. And we have the Russian opposition media. We see here Medusa. According to them, they claim that the Russian Ministry of Defense wants to recruit 300,000 soldiers and get ready to invade Ukraine from the north. The claim is that Kharkiv is supposed to either be captured or encircled, probably encircled because the city is one of the biggest of Ukraine, and thus the house-to-house fighting would be insane. But the claim is by the Russian opposition media that the Russians want to raise 300,000 through a second mobilization wave and thus put the pressure on Kharkiv, both to capture and put pressure on the city and to create some kind of buffer zone that Putin is talking about for quite a while here in the north, as Belgorod right now is getting shelled almost daily as well from the Ukrainian side. We've talked about this in the past as well, that at least some of that shelling cannot really be justified by the rules of law either in this case. But the issue here is, while this is some information that supposedly he wants to raise 300,000 for this, the question would be, and with which equipment? Now, the Russian side is better equipped when it comes to quantity as of now. I don't think there is any serious claim of this, that the Russians still have deep pockets in or deep storage areas. They are still fairly extensive and will last for another 2 to 5 years. They have a sizable production every month as well, but that doesn't mean they are filled up. According to different statistics, the equipment of the Russian side is somewhere between 30 and 60%, according to which claims the equipment is far from being what it's supposed to be in regards to doctrine when it comes to heavy equipment, artillery, tanks, IFVs, APCs, etc. And raising 300,000, but already having too few heavy weapons kind of leaves the question, are they supposed to cross the border with a handful of mortars, some shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons and assault rifles, or where are the heavy weapons supposed to come from? So while this claim that Russia is planning a next wave of mobilization is continuously coming basically for over a year now, it still doesn't make too much sense, as Russia is still probably not likely to equip those 300,000. Then we have some fresh images from Fortification Work that are still being published, where we see the Ukrainians working on fortifications in the background. You can see that it's dug in here with some concrete modular design that was obviously not built in place, and then it's going to be covered with dirt. We see the same here for an underground shelter. You see how deep it is dug underground, which will then allow for soldiers to live in there, to sleep, etc. And we see the placement of more dragon teeth. The same here, a video of fresh fortification work here, an anti-tank ditch that is being dug, that is going to support the Ukrainian side as well, where the Ukrainians now have started to build defenses in depth, even in regions where it's currently quiet, but as said, in preparation for further Russian attacks. The Russians, at the same time, in response to the Crocus attack, are intensifying their raids against migrants. Most of them, or a lot of them at least, are aimed at these wildeberries. The wildberries, this is basically a Russian Amazon where a lot of migrants are working in low-paid jobs. The claim is obviously not just that they are looking for terrorists, but that they want to combine this with pressure to force a lot of them to sign contracts with the Russian military. And there's also some claim that this is one of the big lucrative companies that is not in the hands of one of Putin's cronies. So maybe this is some way of putting pressure on the owners to sell the company to somebody close to Putin. But as said, this is more or less rumors. This doesn't have a serious foundation. In troop generation from the Ukrainian side, we see that they are starting to work on a copy, or that they are testing a copy of the Lancet. We've seen that from both sides, that they copy each other's successful devices. For instance, when the ground-launched small diameter bomb was announced, it was obvious that this is going to be a useful and powerful weapon. Now the Russians have built basically the same thing for their Tornado S multiple launch rocket system, where they are also preparing and working on missiles that fire 250 kilogram air bombs, iron bombs from those multiple launch rocket systems. And here we see the Lancet, which is dangerous and which is feared by the Ukrainians, is now getting copied by the Ukrainians to basically use what's useful that the opponent has shown to you. International support, we have now the news that a next Skynex system and another Iris TSLM battery are about to be handed over to Ukraine. So some improvement on their air defense is going to be expected fairly soon. We also have news about the Czech ammunition. Now, the Czech ammunition initiative supposedly found 1.5 million in total. It's unclear, though, how much of this is actually paid. There were some claims that the first 800,000 were already paid. Now I read that only 300,000 are paid as of now, so it's unclear, but more and more nations pitch in, with some with smaller numbers, some with bigger numbers. Clear is that at least 300,000 of those shells are financed and are going to be in Ukraine before June, so within the next 2 months. Finland and Canada have also now given more money for that initiative, and Lithuania has given Ukraine anti-drone systems. No details about the number and the type of the system at the same time. Czech Republic is going to give Ukraine its last 2 Mi-24 combat helicopters. Ukraine is using those, that's the Hind, and Czech Republic is giving them the last 2 they had. The Dutch are buying F-16 ammunition at a volume of 150 million euros, so that the future Ukrainian F-16s are going to be prepared to fire something. The French are working on integrating their air-to-ground munitions onto the F-16s so they can use the French weapons as well. And from France, we have the news that Nexa wants to increase its artillery production, its ammunition production 8-folds, but within the next 3 years. And the number that is going to be produced this year is only 80,000 shells. So there's a big way to go in total, even though 8-fold increase sounds great. It starts at a fairly low level. But at the same time, news are coming that France is pressuring the defense industry to prioritize defense work, as most of those companies aren't purely defense companies. They do civilian products as well. And here the French government wants to pressure them to prioritize them, to increase production, to produce faster. And they threaten, according to some regulation, they can actually force them and dictate them what they are producing in times of needs. And the government is threatening the defense companies with this as well. Rheinmetall is reported to build a new gunpowder factory in Romania for the production of additional artillery shells. And bad news for Ukraine, Denmark is selling 24 of its F-16s that are being decommissioned to Argentina. Now, that's amazing for Argentina, as they have not had any supersonic fighter jet for, I don't know, 15 years or something like this. I think right now all they have is A4 Skyraider that are being used as in a fighter bomber role. So why that's great news for Argentina. At the same time, obviously, those 24, there's someone else in Europe who might direly need them and apparently is not going to get them. At the same time, there's some glimmer of hope from Greece, because Greece intends, according to media reports, to sell part of its F-16 fleet and its Mirage 2000 to consolidate its fleet, and that might open up a new window of opportunity for fresh fighter jets for Ukraine, but as of now, at least, this is unclear whether this is going to happen. And finally, we have a fairly interesting video. Now, this is not the first time we've seen it, but it's a rare occasion. There we see a drone against drone fight, and this time an explosive drone who is from the Ukrainians that is striking a winged drone and apparently destroying it with a regular FPV drone. Here shooting down an enemy drone. And that was already it from me for now. If you like the situation report, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment. What do you think about the current developments, and what do you think about the Crocus terrorist attack? Who do you think was behind it? Do you believe it was the Islamic State, or do you have a suspect? Do you think about a suspect nobody even talked about it, so nobody even talked about so far? Then leave that in the comment section. And if you're new here, then I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel, and that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.